free. Palestine! Palestine! Palestine!
The occupation of Palestine by Israel has been one of the most controversial political topics over the past few months especially. This led to nationwide protesting around the UK from those that didn't agree. And Sheffield is no different. Here in South Yorkshire, protesters are more desperate than ever to show their disgust at the way the government has handled the situation. But what do the average people of Sheffield actually think about the protests?
I just feel that everybody has a right to protest, but it can be intimidating to walk through a large crowd to get to where you want to go.
I think there should be awareness among people because it's a genocide altogether and people are not really aware of what's happening in Palestine.
I don't really want to say much about it. I don't want to offend anybody.
Though these are not the only forms of protests. A number of students recently held an unauthorised protest at the Sheffield Hallam Owen building. In this, they overtook Sheffield Hallam Leaving Do for Chris Husbands. This was because they believed the Vice President of Sheffield Hallam, Chris Husbands, was contributing and aiding to Israel's occupation in Gaza.
Children are dying. It really is a celebration covered in Palestinian blood. They use our tuition fees. They use your pensions.
Many hid their identities with masks as police were called to the protests. Considering the fact there is such major opposition and personal risk to more direct action, it does pose the question, what is the benefit of protesting in this way? And more importantly, is it helping the cause or disrupting the overall message for peace?
Yeah, my name is Laura Krasteva. I'm a performance maker and cultural producer. I make socially and politically engaged work, often responding to what's happening in the world now, today. I'm working on a few projects, and a few weeks ago I took part of the Sheffield Writers for Palestine, and I performed the poem, yeah.
So what do you think about direct action protests as opposed to authorised protests, specifically in terms of this Palestine movement?
There's two things. There's different actions. Different people will take part in different actions because not every form of protest is for everyone, because there are issues of power at play, and there's this idea where this theatre maker called Augustus Boal quotes the Che Guevara saying that to express solidarity is to take the same risks. So it's really interesting actually that in the English language you don't have a name for expressing solidarity. In other languages, Latin languages, you have être solidaire or ser solidario, no? The action of expressing that solidarity. In English you don't even have the language to talk about that. So thinking about solidarity being taking the same risks, really, what does that mean, right? And not everyone will be able to take those same risks. So it is important to have different types of protest because different people will be able to engage in those types of protest. And then, perhaps unfortunately, some actions will get more coverage, people will make more noise about them, often to the detriment of the cause perhaps, because they were like, look at what these people did, they occupied or they broke something or whatever. However, whatever brings the spotlight to the issue at play is important. So you may disagree with the method, but we need to look at what are people trying to achieve with those methods. And it's easy to criticize something that is perhaps more violent or that technically is against some laws, but when you have been peacefully protesting and peacefully bringing attention to a cause for decades, for generations, and nothing's been happening, what else is left to do?
Whatever your stance on this may be, we know one thing for sure. The protests in Sheffield aren't going away anytime soon, and neither is the police presence. But will we see escalation to the level of places like London?
Yeah, I'm AJ. I'm a member of the Socialist Workers' Party and the Sheffield Campus Coalition for Palestine.
Do you think that the campaign ultimately has been successful or unsuccessful?
I personally believe the campaign's been successful, but we need to continue escalating. The fight's still not over, and we've made large gains. Zechariah Deutsch has been removed from the University of Sheffield website. More people have been joining the movement and speaking out against their universities or their employers, or overall attending demonstrations. People have put pressure on the council, the MPs and the university for being complicit in the genocide. Personally, I think we need to see an escalation in the forms of tactics that we're going to be using, and we're working to pursue that, especially as universities are going to continue to prop up Israel in funding and continue to be complicit in the genocide that's happening.
How, in your opinion, do you think you need to escalate?
There's a lot of different options that we've been looking at and considering and discussing. At least a few of us have. We've been working to prepare, and a lot of universities across the country have either made significant grounds because of an occupation. Leeds and Goldsmiths were under occupation, Leeds for around 2-3 weeks, I believe, and Goldsmiths for over a month, where students went in and refused to leave until their demands were met. And I believe that we could possibly see that level of escalation within Sheffield.
The Palestine Solidarity Campaign in Sheffield has organised a protest at Louise Haigh Parliamentarian Office every Friday. They also organise a bus down to London to join with the protest at Market Square, showing that it's not only a local pursuit but a national one. National and global, with American students protesters occupying Columbia campus in overnight tents. There doesn't seem to be a call to escalate to that level from the average protester here in Sheffield, though. Here, for the most part, protesters are just simply happy being a part of the community again.
I'm not sure about the word escalation, but yeah, I mean, when I saw about the protests, I was thinking, oh yeah, it'd be great if stuff like that happens here as well, because America's obviously Israel's biggest backer, and the genocide that's happening wouldn't be possible without American support. So it's really important that people are doing stuff in America, but Britain's been a massive supporter of Israel as well, and providing a lot of diplomatic legitimacy for what's happening. So I definitely welcome it if more things like that were happening over here. Obviously I would welcome the kind of police repression that the American students seem to be facing, but fortunately our police aren't quite as violent as theirs.
We are all responsible for justice and equality in this world, and whatever happens in one part of the world impacts us here. So I think it's important that we show solidarity with all communities.
I gave some thought as to what my personal thoughts were around the protests in Sheffield. Yeah, well, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's gone from only students protesting and a very small minority knowing about what's even going on in Palestine to it becoming mainstream news very quickly, and older people, the whole entire community really coming to protest, and that's what I've seen and experienced here in Sheffield for sure. But yeah, I think mainly that's because what's going on, the conflict has definitely heated up and escalated for sure, but also the media coverage and people's responses to the escalation over the seas in Palestine has directly contributed to there being more protests. At least that's what I've seen here in Sheffield, and nationally, but especially here in Sheffield, that it does seem to be a very nice community feel around the protests. You see the same people, and yeah, I'd say that's mainly been a positive thing for the community of Sheffield. And yeah, I would definitely urge anybody, people of all backgrounds, to continue engaging with these protests, because at the very least they bring back sense of community I've seen in Sheffield personally.